For this unit, we'll be looking at how stereotypes developed along racial lines. Though the subject of racism can be uncomfortable at times, it's necessary to confront race issues as part of America's history. Sadly, racism continues to be an issue in American popular entertainment, which is a reflection of the racial tensions still prevalent in American culture as a whole. Because race continues to be an issue, it's important that we become aware of these insidious patterns in the early history of American popular music, so we can watch out for them in popular music of today. As we begin our history of American popular music, we must address the relation between black and white. The merging of African and European cultures in America produced some unique forms of music. The first form of musical and theatrical entertainment to be regarded as distinctively American in character was the Minstrel Show. Featuring mainly white performers carrying out parodies of African American music, dress, dance, and dialect in artificially blackened skin, the blackface minstrel show was one of the most popular entertainment forms of the New World in the late 1800s. There are several ways to explain the appeal of the minstrel shows. Comedies and jokes about particular ethnic groups were common among working-class Americans, especially in the cities where so many immigrants were fresh off the boat, still carrying many of their cultural particularities with them. Comedy that stereotyped other ethnic groups might have been a way to blow off steam, to relieve the frustrations of working alongside people of various ethnicities. But the minstrel show represented a more complicated relationship between whites and blacks. Many working-class whites may have used blackface to express their own identities as marginalized people. Or perhaps it made poorer whites feel better to laugh at the caricatures of African Americans who were certainly in a worse condition than them. Though the actors who initially helped popularize blackface were white, blacks also were successful minstrel performers. There's something very haunting about the idea of African Americans painting their own faces with artificial black paint, exaggerating the mouth, nose, and eyes to meet the demands of the public for the blackface stereotype. But the minstrel shows were a great way to make money, so why not play the blackface if that's what pays the bills? This approach by some black entertainers to cater to the stereotypes placed on them by whites can still be seen in aspects of popular culture today, which is why it's important to try to understand this phenomenon as it developed in the earliest days of American popular music. The minstrel show rose to popularity in the 1830s, and blackface as a form could still be found in film and television in the 1950s and 1960s. Because the minstrel show was most popular before the era of recorded sound, we must rely on later performances crystallized on screen in the 20th century. Watch the clip from Yes Sir, Mr. Bones, a 1951 film that tries to recapture the minstrel show comedy era by using aging blackface performers. Cotton Watts is a particularly negative caricature. All the jokes appear to hinge upon the character's stupidity. He misunderstands the simplest instructions. When he recounts a job interview where he's asked a math question about the distance from the sun to the moon, he thinks he's being asked to deliver the mail along that route. Notice also the joke about being paid what he's worth. Clearly, in this blackface comedy, the audience is laughing at how stupid the man is, applauding as he jigs and jives his way off stage. There were critics of blackface. Frederick Douglass said, "Blackface performers are the filthy scum of white society, who have stolen from us a complexion denied them by nature, in which to make money and pander to the corrupt taste of their white fellow citizens." His criticism was that African Americans were being exploited, their identities stolen, twisted, in order to make money that did not benefit the black community as a whole. It is a pattern we will see again and again throughout the history of American popular music. Let's look at three musical artists who achieved popular success in the minstrel show era. The first is George Washington Dixon, who performed as Zip Coon. Dixon was the first white performer to establish a wide reputation as a blackface performer. In 1828, he made his New York debut and became famous for his Ethiopian songs, Longtail Blue and Coal Black Rose. Ethiopian song, by the way, is another term used for the minstrel song. The character Dixon was known for was Zip Coon, a northern dandified black who danced jigs and sang ballads in the European style of music. The dandy was a stereotype. It was the person who wore flashy clothes in order to lure women and to show off his upper-class status. American working-class people loved to make fun of the dandy as someone who tried to elevate himself and his status, which, of course, is a very undemocratic and pretentious trait, and is therefore commonly mocked throughout the history of American entertainment, and also in American politics. You can imagine how ridiculous and comical it would be to American audiences then to see a dandy in blackface. The African American represented the lowest of the low in American society economically, racially, etc. So it would be quite hilarious to imagine this type of person taking on a dandified air. You may wonder then why Americans have embraced the song Yankee Doodle Dandy if the dandy was a symbol of mockery. The song was originally sung by British soldiers who were making fun of the ragtag American troops. Though we tend to think the reference to macaroni has something to do with pasta, it was actually a wig worn by uppity Londoners who were considered fools for focusing too much on their clothing and appearance. British soldiers were making fun of the Yankees for trying to raise themselves up above their social status, for being dandies. So when the Yankees actually beat the British in the Revolutionary War, the song was fully embraced as a way of describing the ragtag upstart nation that defeated an empire. The second important artist of the minstrel show era was Daddy Rice. He's known for the song Jim Crow, which was performed as a Southern slave dressed in rags. It was the first international American hit. Daddy Rice used the Jim Crow character to make fun of the wealthy and upper class, which was, of course, well received by working class audiences. Here's some text from the beginning of Daddy Rice's fictional autobiography, The Life of Jim Crow. Though I'm not well equipped to read it in the proper comedic style, I think it helps to be read out loud so you can get the sense of how Rice uses the sound of the language to make his points. Notice how Rice plays the fool while also getting his jabs in at upper-class snobs. I make my infernal sensibilifications yieldify to de fox populaire, as I thinks they call the people's breath at the Walnut Street Theatre. I'm going in short time to do like other great hactors, publish my account of man and manners in these blessed states, and I trust I shall be enabled to do them as much justice as they deserve, on account of my debility to use falsificationority as the fornificated theatrical ladies do. Here again we have a character trying to sound smart, but the more he tries to impress with fancy words, the clearer it is that he's a fool. But as a fool, he's able to make fun of high society theater goers, who tended to criticize the lowbrow comedy of minstrelsy. Rice takes on their words using the Latin phrase vox popular, which means the voice of the people, to make a clever point. Latin is the language of the educated, and so it is quite comical that this low-class, uneducated slave is trying to use a fancy upper-class Latin phrase in order to speak to the average, everyday people of the minstrel show audience. Rice jokes that fox popular is just a fancy word for the people's breath, which was notoriously smelly in lowbrow theater crowds. Daddy Rice is taking delight in playing the fool in order to display the high-minded elitism and dandified foolishness of the upper-class theater goer. The third musical artist of the minstrel show era is certainly one of the most significant. His work as a songwriter has endured long after the minstrel show fell out of favor. If you don't know Stephen Foster's name, you certainly have heard at least one of his songs covered by a wide range of artists. Watch an edited version of the American Experience documentary posted below, using the study questions as your guide.